Hello, hello. Just getting set up on our live recording. Yay. Hey, Peggy, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad everyone's here. A few people are still coming into the waiting room. Awesome, awesome. Hey, I'm so glad everybody's here for Practitioner Training Tuesday. It's one of my favorite times of the week to come in and share good information and hear what's going on for you and how you're serving your clients and how I can support you to serve your clients. I love it. It's one of my favorite days. So just out of the gate here, please at any time, feel free to come on camera and off mute. Know that you are being recorded. So if you don't want your image captured, you can just come off mute. And if you're not able to, if you're in a quiet place right now, you can always use the chat to send in your questions or your comments. I love them both. For those of you who have not met yet, I'm Gina Schatz. I'm the developer of the Schatz Method, which is a practitioner method for both movement and manual practitioners. So I developed a method where we can all work together to get amazing results for our clients, especially if you're navigating pain, injuries, rehab, that type of thing. So I love doing that. It's what I do clinically. I still work clinically as a practitioner, and I also train other practitioners to do the same type of good work. What I'm doing here for us today on Tuesdays is I'm giving you little snapshots, little nuggets of applied functional anatomy, if you will, something that you can utilize, maybe think about differently than you've thought about before. And then, hopefully if I've done my service here, you could also implement it right away. So we've talked about lots of things. We've talked about stretching. We've talked about muscles. We talked about how to get muscles stronger, how to stretch muscles. We've talked about pain and injury patterns. We've talked about when to use other modalities, we've talked about all kinds of stuff. So the point is, in all of that there's no topic that's off the table. So anything that comes up for you today, hey, Jeffrey, I'm glad you're here. Any topic that comes up for you today, any questions that you have, please feel free to ask them. The way we work the hour is that for the first 30 minutes or so, I'll pour into you. I'll give you a viewpoint on one aspect that we can dive into a little deeply, and then, again, hopefully get you to implement. Hey, Jeffrey, I'm glad you're here too. Thanks for using the chat. And then for the second half of the hour, that's open to you. So you can be hot seated if you want to talk with me directly on camera, off mute, or you can just type your question in the chat. But for the second half of the hour, I answer questions. And again, any question is what I want to say the word viable, but that's not the right word. Any question is allowed. That also sounds like there's rules. Anyway, whatever you have, if it's a client question, if it's an anatomy question, if it's a training question, if you're in another training and you're not understanding something, or you don't know how two pieces fit together, whatever question you have, I'm here. I'm here for you. I want to serve you today. And at the end of our year here, as we're getting close to, the last day of the month and close to the end of the year, I really want to just applaud all of you for showing up again, because this time of year tends to get really busy, and at least in the Western Hemisphere, there's less daylight and we're running around more, which makes us more tired. So we feel like we can't get as much done in a day. So if you showed up here today, high five. If you showed up here today, high five, because that means that you're making time for yourself. It also really inspires me, even if we haven't met one-on-one or had a conversation one-on-one, it really inspires me to have you here, because that means that you're out there doing really good work, that you're out there looking for more answers and looking for more clarity and investing in yourself in time and resources. And that makes you a better practitioner, which means you're helping more people. So I just want to thank you again for showing up here today in the way that you do always. Anita, I'm glad that you're here as well. Okay, so the topic for today that you may have seen in your email, the topic for today is mobility. And mobility, like all topics, mobility is a topic that we probably could spend way more than 30 minutes on. In fact, I have spent more than 30 minutes on. But in this 30 minutes, again, we're here for an hour, but in the 30 minutes that I'm going to share with you, I want to give you some ideas about mobility that maybe you haven't thought of before. And these ideas were the ones that I came to that I hadn't thought of before. And it was like, oh, wait, if I apply it this way, I get a different result. How about if I apply it differently and get a different result? So whether you're a movement practitioner or a manual practitioner, mobility still matters. And the reason is because, obviously, if you're a movement practitioner, you need to know the range that someone can move in. Now, range of motion and mobility are not the same, and flexibility is a third topic still. And I dive into these 3 actually in a few different courses that I teach. In Aspired Beyond Anatomy Level 1, we go over it, and then we do revisit it again in Applied Functional Anatomy. Of course, we also go over it at length in the Mastery Program, because the Mastery Program is built around my method. And in my method, I found that in these 3 distinctions of 3 different types of focuses that we used to talk about, mobility, range of motion, and flexibility, that I was confusing them. And when I was confusing them, I wasn't able to do anything about them, which means I wasn't effective. So out of the gate, mobility is not the same as range of motion, and neither of them are the same as flexibility. So we're only talking about mobility. And if you're a movement practitioner, those 3, mobility, flexibility, and range of motion all matter. And like I said, it also matters when you're a manual practitioner. When you're a movement practitioner, it matters because you want to know where someone can move safely and what you need to do to balance out their movement from strength and flexibility. If you're a manual practitioner, you still need to know what their mobility is, because their chronic pain patterns and their chronic pain symptoms are often tied to their mobility. I mean it. I started as a manual practitioner. I was doing movement for my own body, and then I became a movement practitioner, and I blended them together. And what I found is that when I added mobility into the manual practices that I was doing, I was getting them results out of their pain. And then when I applied that mobility into their movement patterns, I was preventing them from being in pain. So it was like super awesome. So whether you're manual or movement practitioner, I think this is a big topic. Who here, and I see a lot of you are off camera today, totally cool. Did somebody new come in? Sylvia, it's nice to see you. Saeed, I'm glad you're here as well. So you're off camera today, no problem. Who here, type it in the chat for me, who here has worked with mobility before? And actually, before we do that, tell me who's here today. Are you movement practitioners or are you manual practitioners? And it doesn't change what I share with you. Honestly, I really believe that there's a synergy between the two, that we really need to know what the others know. For a lot of reasons, because it affects our treatment plan, but it helps me know if you're a movement practitioner or if you're a manual practitioner because of how you'll implement the information. So type in the chat for me, all of you who are here, type in the chat for me whether you're a movement practitioner or manual practitioner, please, so I know who I'm talking to today. Yoga instructor, hey Peggy. I'm a yoga instructor too. And then also share with me in the chat, Jeffrey, MT and a yoga instructor, me too, just like me. If you would please share in the chat whether you address mobility or whether this is a new topic for you, because that will also help me know how deeply to go, and also what kind of a net I get to capture for you today. Aspiring yoga instructor. Awesome, Anita. Keep aspiring. You got it. In the process of getting certified. Awesome. Congratulations. That's going to be a really exciting day. I address mobility, Peggy says, and range of motion. Okay, awesome, Peggy. So that suggests to me then that you know there's a difference between the two, mobility and range of motion, or are you at this point using them interchangeably? I'm curious because it took me a minute to get my hand around separating them out, and they're definitely different. So who else here has been using mobility, or where are you in the mobility conversation? Let me know so I can serve you best. Go ahead and type that in the chat for me. Interchangeable. Ah, okay. Good to know. Good to know. Okay, they're not interchangeable. I'm not going to talk about the differences today, but I could in another class, unless that's where you guys want us to go. But I did already send you guys a note on what I was going to talk about. So, a girl only has so much time. Range and motion, Jeffrey says, and mobility are addressed. Good. So they're addressed in your practice, Jeffrey. I'm thinking that's what you mean by that. And are you also suggesting that they're separate? Range of motion and mobility are not the same. I'm hoping that they're separate for you at this point. And if not, again, I'm going to come in next week and probably talk about it. Yes, they're separate. Okay, beautiful. Great, great, great. Good, good. Okay. So if you're still typing, continue to type in the chat. Sylvia, you're an aspiring yoga instructor and new to all. Well, good for you. Welcome to the tribe. I'm so glad that you're here. Already out of the gate and you're deciding to double down on your training. Awesome. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of practitioners and I'm super inspired by, because we're changing the world, you guys. They need us. Everybody needs us. Okay, so mobility. Mobility as a topic, think about joints when you think about mobility. Not muscles, not stretching, not flexibility, not even how people move. Just think about joint structures, because when you think about mobility, it is largely focused on the constitution of the ligaments. Mobility is largely focused on the constitution of ligaments. So ligaments are the structure that holds bones together. Bones are held together with ligaments. Otherwise, we'd be a pile of pickup sticks. Tendons are often confused with joint structures, and it's not that they're not part of a joint, but they hold a muscle to a bone. There is not a conversation on mobility in tendons or muscles. The conversation on mobility is in ligaments, how bones are held together. So, and I just realized I don't have Murph here. I don't have my skeleton. He's upstairs. I forgot to bring him down. Okay. Well, I heard him cry because he loves to be, he loves to be my TA on days like this. And I could show you his two bones, but he doesn't have ligaments, so that's okay. All right. So when we think about mobility and we think about ligaments, if you consider two bones, this is the end of a bone, and this is a bone and its end. They are held together by a structure called ligament. We know this, right? If the ligament is in a certain constitution, has a certain constitution, the bones are held together in a perfect balance of tension and ability to move. And that would start talking then into range of motion and flexibility. Again, those are not conversations about ligaments though, but they all yoke together, but they are not conversations on ligaments. Conversation on ligaments is about mobility. So the constitution of the ligaments holds two bones together and allows for a certain type of movement. If the constitution of the ligaments, though, is hypermobile, meaning too much mobility, the laxity in the ligaments allows for more movement, bone next to bone, at the joint structure, which then affects all the other tissues in the joints and how they respond to that amount of laxity. On the other end of the scale, hypomobility, less movement, means that the ligaments that holds the two bones together is more taut, and it allows for less movement at the joint, okay? And when that happens, when there's less movement, then that affects how much the muscles can affect the joint when they move. And so it goes on and on from there. So let's just recap here. I want to make sure I didn't start too much in the middle. It sounded like you guys had a grasp on mobility, but let's just recap here. Mobility is a conversation around the constitution of the ligaments at the joints. Bones are held together. All two bones are held together, and they make up a joint where they're held together. We talked about that in Principles of Anatomy, in Anatomy Principle number 1. At that joint formation where two bones are held together, the ligaments and the constitution, meaning how lax that ligament is or how taut that ligament is, affects what happens at the joint. So think about the laxity of the ligaments like a hammock. So if a bone is a tree and another bone is a tree, and what connects the two together is a structure like a hammock, if it's a brand new hammock taken right out of the package, never been sat in before, it's going to be pretty taut, and that hammock's going to hang kind of high, right? That would be like a hypomobile ligament. It also could just be in neutral range too, especially if that new hammock that's holding two trees together, when you sit in that hammock, it gives a little bit, right? Just enough to hold a adult body safely in that hammock. On the other end of the spectrum though, bone and bone, we're using tree and tree, and the hammock in the middle, which would be the ligament. If that ligament has a lot of laxity in it, when that adult body sits in that hammock, whoop, that hammock is like butt in the sand. So lots of laxity in a hypermobile constitution. This matters. Hey, Royce, I'm glad you're here. Laura, I know you popped in too. Nice to see you. Hi. So when we're talking about mobility, for those of you who just came in, and mobility as a conversation around joint structures, specifically to the ligaments, yeah? And so the reason why this is important is because in all constitutions, whether they are hypomobile, more taut, like less given the ligament, or hypermobile, butts in the sand in that hammock, in both types of constitutions, and also the constitution in the middle, which is normal range of mobility, in all types of constitutions, all bodies can feel tight. All bodies can feel tight. And that gets us into a little bit of a discernment in our treatment plan. So when bodies feel tight, and I say this with love, guys, I say this with love. I am both a massage therapist and a yoga teacher and a couple other things. So I'm not disparaging any one of us. When things feel tight out of the gate, a rookie move for a massage therapist is to release it, release it, release it, release it. And a rookie move for a yoga instructor is to stretch it, stretch, 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 hold long stretches. And I get that because I am both of those things and others as well. The problem with that general approach to tightness in a hypermobile constitution is that the longer you hold a joint structure, like in yin yoga poses, for example, and in other long hold stretches, personal trainers do it too. The longer you hold a structure, the more it changes. Really tough to change ligaments and tendons, really tough to change ligaments and tendons because there's not as much blood flow and we don't want them to change. However, the longer we hold something in the body, the more it changes. When you do long holds to ligaments that are lax, it creates instability in the joint, because now that hammock that's butt in sand has created an opening for all of its laxity to then be present because nothing's holding it together. In hypermobile joints, in the absence of a strong constitutional ligament, the muscles, the body relies on the muscles to hold those joints in stability. So when we do long holds and we're creating lots of flexibility in muscles, we've now taken away the stability at that joint if we've long hold and long stretched the muscles in a hypermobile constitution, because the ligaments aren't able to hold it as well as they could in a regular mobile constitution. So long stretches and long holds and releasing everything in hypermobility is not indicated. You'll actually create immediate relief and more pain, because then what ends up happening is either you created an unstable joint, created destabilization in someone's movement function, because movement happens at a joint, again, anatomy principle number one, or in the body's ability and preference to always balance things out, it will come up with muscles that have been long lengthened, knowing that the muscles need to get stronger again to stabilize that joint that's hypermobile, and it will create a rebound effect where the muscles then tighten up again. And that tightness is then you're back to square one. You're like you did a 360. And in that tightening, that can create discomfort or pain or inability to move with optimal function. On the opposite end of the scale, in hypomobility, where there's lots of constitution in that ligament, a little more than maybe what we want ideally, those body types are notorious for doing lots of bulk training, because it's easy for them, right? Like flexibility and long hold stretches or any type of stretches is not what feels good in their body because it's literally the opposite of their constitution. The same as hypermobile. Hypermobile bodies are the ones that are on yoga journal cover. They're the ones with their legs behind their heads because they can't, right? They don't like to lift weights because it's hard. It's the opposite of their constitution. And that's the key, really, that in order for us to balance a constitution, we need to go with what's missing. And we're always looking to balance a constitution because that's how we keep people out of pain, right? And none of us is perfect. We're all perfectly imperfect. So there's always a way to offer more balance in a body. Even in a constitution that is middle of the road in mobility, balancing the constitution. Good, Laura. Hi, it's nice to see you weighing in too. Even in a constitution where the mobility is within a normal range or a healthy range, there's still moment by moment things that need to be balanced, right? Because that person with a normal range of mobility might have been sitting in a chair too long for 3 days in a row at work, right? So then we need to balance them out. So we always want to be balancing our bodies. And that includes not only their daily practices, but also how their body is designed. So we're all designed the same. And then there's there's like unique differences between us. And so in this conversation around mobility, we want to know what the constitution is that we're dealing with so that when our client comes to us and they say that they're tight, we know what they need. In a hypomobile constitution, when they're tight, absolutely. Give them yin yoga, give them long hold stretches, give them massages and release everything at the connective points where muscles and tendons meet the bone. Absolutely do that for a hypomobile constitution. In a hypermobile constitution, we've already talked about how that could actually create pain for them. So what we want to do in a hypermobile constitution is assume that they're out of alignment, which is causing their discomfort. So now at the joint structure, their bones are sitting like this. Doesn't mean that they need chiropractic. We talked about that last week or the week before, I think. So what we want to do is use our skill set in whatever manual or movement practice that you're working with. We do this with the Schatz Method all the time. We recognize that two bones are slightly askew from each other. We bring them back into alignment, and then we create strength. That's what has to happen in a hypermobile constitution. And how to do that, we talked about a few weeks ago. You got to know the muscles in the lever system in order to make that occur, right? So they all sort of stack on each other. So I could talk more and more about hyper and hypomobility, and even the normal range of mobility. The idea, really, the takeaway is that I want you guys to know that hyper and hypomobility are definitely things that we want to know before we address our clients' tightness and discomfort, so that we know which track to take them down. I mean, think about it, right? A hypermobile constitution that comes in with tightness and a hypomobile constitution that comes in with tightness, literally 180-degree differences in the treatment plan. You can't treat everybody the same and expect them to be out of pain. It won't work, right? So we want to know what their constitution is. And then in the normal range, the healthy range of mobility, when they're tight, we're really looking at repetitive strain, long hold patterns, like sitting at a computer, looking down at their cell phone. Even if they're in movement practices, like if they work manual labor and they're doing the same kind of movement over and over and over again, their lever system is working, but it's working in an imbalanced way because it's not lengthening and contracting and then getting to the other side of the body if it's the same movement over and over again. So it doesn't have to be static postures that create these types of symptoms that your clients will come to you. And this is true whether they're working out with you after a long work week, or whether they're coming in for body work after a long work week, or after a long workout, right? We want to know what their body's been up to, so that whatever we do with them supports balancing their constitution. Absolutely. We talk about, there's a test that I run through to be able to run your client through. It's really quick. It's like it's a 4-minute test, but it takes about 30 minutes to teach it. There's a mobility test that I run my clients through, and I share it in Inspired Beyond Anatomy Level 1. And I also share it in, I think, Applied Functional Anatomy. I'll have to look that up and what other course it's in, but I know it's in Inspired Beyond Anatomy Level 1. And what I do is, if I'm not sure what someone's constitution is, I can usually tell at this point. I can usually tell based on some other movement patterns that they'll present with. But if I'm not sure what mobility they have, I will run them through the test just to make sure that I'm on track with what I think they need that day, because it's worth it for me to take the extra 4 minutes at the beginning of my treatment session with them to give them the next 55 minutes of value, right? Because I don't want to lead them down the wrong track. It's also helpful for them to know. So here's the key with mobility. Whatever someone's constitution is, it never changes. It never changes. So you can have, let's say you're a hypomobile constitution and you are taking yin yoga classes. You're biting the bullet, you're doing the thing you don't like to do, or your client is, and they're consistently doing long hold stretches, yin yoga, consistently, day after day after day after day. All that's going to happen is that they're going to create balance in their body and their body's function and decrease their pain and discomfort. They will never change their constitution to then be in a normal range. It doesn't work like that. Same thing in hypermobility. I'm hypermobile. I'm way off the charts in mobility. It doesn't matter if I'm in the gym pumping iron 8 days a week. Doesn't exist. I know. It doesn't matter how much I do. My constitution never changes. I'll feel stronger. I'll feel more intact. Like, my bones are clicked together, my hammock's a little tighter. I'll feel like that for sure. But keep in mind, that's strengthening muscle, right? So muscle strength balances out hypermobility in joint structures, because we can't really strengthen ligaments. Muscles are change agents because blood flows through them. Ligaments and tendons don't change. There's less blood. We don't want them to change. We want our bones to be held together, right? We don't want everything to turn into a slinky hammock halfway through the day. So we want our ligaments and our tendons to stay the same. And that's the point. They don't readily change. We can create stability around a hypermobile joint, but that doesn't mean we've changed the ligament and are no longer hypermobile. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. That's helpful for us to know, because it's not something scary, by the way. It's like I'll never not have brown eyes. That's okay. I love blue eyes, but I'm never going to have them. No worries. So it's helpful for our clients to know that too, because if we can give them that information, then we guide them towards other thoughts that lead them towards healthy practices, right? So like, I know that I'm hypermobile. I know certain things that don't work for me. Long hold poses, like sitting at my desk like I am right now, don't work for me long term, because my bones can easily go when my muscles get into duress, which means I'm then out of alignment, which means I need something different. Like I'm putting my sacrum back in alignment probably every week at this point, because I'm sitting at my computer so long. A hypomobile person will rarely have a sacrum that's out of alignment. So that's not what they need. So what I need to know about my body is what's my constitution and what can I do for best practices. I also do weight bearing exercises every week. Otherwise I'll never make it. I will be legitimately doubled over in pain, and it will feel like I'm tight, and releasing it on a massage table will never get rid of the pain because I'm hypermobile, right? So we want to just know what these constitutions are and what they need. And then we want to be able to communicate that to the people that we're serving so that they can know what they need. And then they're empowered with their own body knowledge, and then they're less afraid. And then they can make right choices for themselves in their own daily practices, which ultimately makes their life higher quality, and it makes our job easier, right? I mean, think about it. If you have a hypermobile person, if I'm your client and you have a hypermobile constitution like mine, way off the scales, and Anita, I'm going to read your note in 1 second because I tend to get squirreled. If you have a hypermobile client like me, and I sit at my desk all day and I don't know that I'm hypermobile, and I get myself into a predicament where my bones are a little bit out of alignment, and you don't have a tool in your toolkit to realign joint structures, and you're not a chiropractor. So chiropractors do adjustments, of course, but there's other ways, because muscles move bone. If you address the muscles, the bones will move. Like I put my sacrum back together all the time. If you don't have those practices, or those tools in your toolbox, and your client has daily practices that continue to make them need that, and you're working with a limited base of knowledge, they come in, you get rid of their pain for about a day. They think that you're lovely, but that it doesn't really solve their problem. And they start looking for another practitioner, and then it's rinse and repeat, and it's Groundhog's Day. Or they're committed and devoted to you, and they're somehow satisfied with the amount of pain that they live with every day. And then it's Groundhog's Day for both of you. I don't know about you, but I don't like when my clients come in with the same pain pattern over and over again. It's boring. It's boring, and I feel like I'm not effective. I don't want that for them. I want them to come in when they need me, absolutely, because life is going to life. Every day brings up something different. Every time we exhale, our body's changed. For sure, come to me so I can support you through your life pattern. But I don't want to do Groundhog's Day with you, because that means that their quality of life isn't really working. So it's important for us to know, and it's important for us to communicate that to our client so that they can have a better life experience, and then our job is easier because we know what we're doing for them, and we know how to make roads with them. All right, Anita, let me see what your chat said. To learn more about how to help someone with hypermobility, which courses in the Schatz Method would you recommend? Great question, Anita. So it's in Inspired Beyond, tongue twister. Inspired Beyond Anatomy Level 1, which is a 20-hour anatomy and physiology course. It's in there, and I walk you through the test when we get to the chapter on, or the lesson on joints and joint structures. And I think that it's also in another course, but I have to double check that. If it was in another course, it would be in Applied Functional Anatomy. So the idea then is that in the Schatz Method Mastery Practitioner Training Program, which is a year-long track, the practitioners who come into that program already have the mobility under wraps, and that's why it's in Level 1. So short answer, it's in Inspired Beyond Anatomy Level 1 for sure, and it may be in other places too. Thanks for asking. Okay, so that's my spiel today on mobility, joint structures, ligaments, the differences between the two, and how they affect our treatment plan, and why we want to know that, and what we don't want to do in certain mobility cases, and what we want to share with our clients so that they can have best practices and live a high quality life with no pain. If I can get everyone out of pain before I leave the planet, I will definitely feel successful. I already feel successful because you guys showed up today, and I love talking with all of you. So what questions are on the table? Anita, let's see. Have to go early. No worries. Thanks again for teaching. I've gained so much as usual. Oh, I'm so glad. So glad, Anita. I'm glad you were here. Thanks for popping in. Even 30 minutes is good. Did I say hi to everybody? Looks like Katie, I didn't say, Kathy, excuse me, Kathy, I didn't say hi to you when you came in. Glad that you're here. All right, loves, turn in the tables, turn in the chairs now. You guys get to ask all the questions. How can I support you? What's coming up for you? It doesn't have to be a question on mobility, although it could be. But if you have something else coming up with clients or training or other anatomy, physiology questions, all questions are allowed. So any questions that you guys have, the next 30 minutes is for you. And if you want to be hot seated, you're welcome to do that too. Hot seat means you come on, you ask me a question, and I ask you a question back before I give you the answer. That's always fun. And if you are not interested in being on camera or unmiking today, go ahead and just type your question into the chat. I'll answer questions in the chat as well. Royce, it looks like you're typing. Are you typing me a love letter? Yeah, okay, awesome. Achilles and peroneal tendinopathy. Okay, is that a question?
Yes. Sorry, I was just sorry for the spelling. It sucks. Um, quite a few having pain running in the back near, obviously, like around the soleus, underneath, also underneath the outside of the joint, going towards the fifth metatarsal. So obviously the peroneal is out there, but also trying to figure out if that's where it's coming from, or if it's coming from, if it's the Achilles, or what needs to be strengthened, since all those muscles and those tendons run from the top of the tibia and the fibula, and then going underneath all the way towards the toes, trying to figure out where it's coming from. And it's both people who are hyper and hypo, so therefore trying to figure out how to help, or what to do, what not to give, especially when you're dealing in a environment with a lot that has both, but the classes are the same. So how to adjust um, and work with after taking time off with the proper amount of rest.
Mm. Okay, awesome. I love that you want to look for the source, Royce. That's amazing, because we don't ever want to, we want to get out of the habit of band-aiding symptoms. So I love that you're looking for the source. I love, love, love that. A little bit of context for me, please. When you say the classes are the same, are you a personal trainer?
I'm a retired professional dancer.
Okay. So there are dance classes
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are dance classes. And I'm also I'm inside of Brookbush as well. So
okay.
I'm also finishing up that certification, and have some other injury prevention like stuff under my belt as well. So I do come from that approach, what I'm teaching. And my professor is also a kinesiologist, so as well. So I come from that standpoint of view. But also, the more I learn, the more I don't know.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
So I'm trying to, I guess, self-check and make sure that just cross my T's and dot my I's, just to make sure there are things that I'm not missing
Yeah.
when I'm giving certain things. Because
Yeah, totally love it. And it's true, right? None of us is ever going to know everything about the body. So there's no one here that's better than another. And it's an endless topic. So you're right. The more we all know, the more we know what we don't know. So that's totally cool. So these folks that you're speaking of, it sounds like you're talking about a few different clients, students. They're in dance classes with you. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And you've tried a few. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What
No,
else?
go. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. And you've tried a few things already?
Yes.
Okay. What did you try that didn't work? It's helpful to eliminate what already didn't work.
I guess implementing, I guess, obviously like 2 or 3 weeks of rest, but with minimal, I guess, minimal corrective exercise movements, I guess, to try to re-strengthen, to re-strengthen the area, so that we be in less pain. But And then also sending them to specialists as well who can monitor them, I think, all the time, and to try to figure out where everything is coming from. Because just like, as I was saying before, so who can like week after week after week, I guess, do those particular tests and do things like that. But what I'm saying is there is too many of them, and also the recovery time is not what it okay, I don't want to say it's not what it should be. I want to say that for now, for lack of having a better way of saying it. I just want to make sure I just cross reference with someone else who deals with people who do all different type of athletes and body types, to see what else are there things in that I should be implementing, on top of what they're getting or maybe not getting. Just like you said, if they're not getting what they should be getting, they'll keep moving to somewhere else. So I was like, the progress is not really where it should be. I'm thinking just from 20, 25 years of like being in the industry. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm asking.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I love that you're, sending them off to other places to get what they need done. And I really want to appeal to all of us that it's amazing to partner with other practitioners that do different things. But my agenda is what I was going to say. What I really want us all to have as movement and manual practitioners is to know that we're the specialists. So I want us to have enough training that we don't have to refer to someone as a lateral move. I want to refer to someone who does acupuncture, who works with needles, because I don't do that. Or I want to, refer to someone who does something wildly different than what I do, because I can't do everything. But I don't want to refer to someone who does almost what I do, just better. I want you to be better. So I love that you're here. Thank you for being here. Is the student body that you're teaching adults or adolescents?
No, they're all adults, pre-professional to professional.
Okay.
So I would say between 15 and what, 40, 45. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
With
Jeffrey,
careers.
okay, cool. So Jeffrey, I hear you. It sounds like it might be a fracture. And this is what I want us to all be really careful of. Refrain from making very quick diagnoses like that. There's no way we can know if it's a fracture. And if they were sent to a specialist somewhere else, I'm assuming that specialist is like an orthopedic person, they would have been able to already assess that it was a fracture. And if they said no, or they haven't said yes, anyway, my point is just be really thoughtful, because what we do sometimes is we make rash diagnoses that are way out of our scope. We scare the shit out of our clients, which is unfair, and we bypass the ability to support them. So I haven't heard anything that makes it sound like it's a fracture. I don't have enough information either, but I haven't heard anything that makes it sound like it's a fracture. So I can't see your face, Jeffrey, so I'm hoping this is being received with love. I'm not debating it with you. I'm just letting us know that there's more for us here. And we want to be really thoughtful about just, sending it all out too quickly, because we might miss a really golden opportunity where we can absolutely change someone's life. What I'm not saying, though, is that if you think it's a fracture, that you dive in deeply and do something radical because nobody told you it was a fracture. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying be thoughtful. So Royce, I've said this in each week, and it's just worth it to repeat it right here. I can't ethically give specific advice or treatment plan for a client who I've never seen. So I'm going to just walk us through here some ideas, some theories, some ideas that you can parse out with the people that you're supporting, and maybe it'll even trigger an idea for you that you'll know if you do want to work somehow differently with them, or if it's the right place for you to refer out. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that what I heard you say, tell me if I'm wrong, that there's several students of yours that have the same pain, and so you're thinking that it's something that you're doing or not doing while you're teaching them that's creating this in multiple.
Yes, that may also, it could be the level of the intensity of the work we're doing right now with a lot of like type 2 muscle activity movement, for different type of work, quick twitch movement. Also, maybe not enough the recovery time, or it could be that they're coming back to, like, they're doing the 3 or 4 weeks, but they're coming back too soon, from recovery, because sometimes level 1 Level 0 strain could be, what, 0 to, what, like 3 or 4 weeks, but it could take longer. So they're staying off, but maybe they need to stay off longer and not come back, to minimal movement sooner. So yeah, just like, it's just not sitting right with me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I believe that the body is designed to move. I don't believe that the body is designed to be stagnant. So
yeah.
unless there is a true diagnosis that suggests rest is the only way, I don't think that 100% rest longer is the answer. So I would wipe that one right out. You wrote down, did you mean peroneal tendinopathy when you typed in the chat? Okay. Was that a diagnosis that somebody else gave these students of yours, or did you assess this on your own?
No, it was is what the physiotherapist said. I mean,
Okay.
when they told me what was wrong, and they pointed to where they have the issues, was right below the fibula, all the way down, and then some of the pain was on the outside of the foot, next to that fifth metatarsal, and then also underneath the foot is of the foot in the middle of the foot. I was like, okay, so you have a lot of pain in those areas of where all the origin and insertions are connecting in the lower part of the lower half of the extremity. So I said, you obviously this stuff is inflamed, and so when they got checked out, yes, that's where it's coming from. Those areas back there
Got it.
behind the joint. So yes.
Got it. Where did they also diagnose something on the Achilles? Or you said the Achilles was the area, but they were diagnosed with peroneal
Yeah,
tendinopathy?
they were diagnosed, with Peroneal.
Okay, got
Yes.
it. I got it. You ready? I got it. Yay. So in that area behind their leg is where they have some symptoms. Is that what you said? Like near the Achilles area? Okay, perfect. How much, hi Naima, it's nice to see you before I get off on my excited, passionate response here. Okay, how much pain in the body is referred pain, guys? Anybody know?
40%.
How much pain is referred? What's the percentage?
To 40.
Did you have a guess, Royce?
I did.
It's so much, it's 80 to 90% of pain in the body is referred. So that's super cool, because if someone points to here and says right here, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time there. I mean, you might look at it, but then immediately go somewhere else. And the somewhere else would tell us from where referral patterns refer. If you know anything about trigger points, that can sometimes lead you towards a path. It doesn't have to be trigger point pain, though, that's causing a referral pattern, but you could still follow pain patterns. Where muscles attach, where muscles share attachment points, where muscles share attachment points makes you want to look at their tendon and also their fascia. And then where's the other end of the muscle? And where's that fascial band go? And so it just all continues from there. So that's one thing to think about when someone says the pain is here. Cool. And I love that you said there's all these muscles that are in that area. Right. It could be any one of them. But if they're pointing at their Achilles, it's probably not one of those muscles. That's probably a referral pain. So that's cool. Then when you have the diagnosis of peroneal tendinopathy, does tendinopathy mean anything to you, Royce? Does that diagnosis land for you?
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, when I hear it, I mean, it's another word from tendinitis. Another word from, potato.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily suggest that there's inflammation, but it definitely says that there's something going on in the tendon. So the tendon of that muscle is in duress. So that means that because tendons respond to force, that there's something about the force in that muscle that is giving symptoms and a diagnosis into the tendon. Now, that doesn't mean that it's too much force, though, because remember what we just talked about with mobility. In hypermobility, those folks are still tight. Their muscles are still contracting. Hypermobile people still need to lengthen their muscle spindles. They just need to do it in a different way, and joint formation needs to be considered as well. So it's possible that there's something going on in the force in that peroneal muscle based on the diagnosis that you got from the other specialist. Awesome. Thanks for the heads up, other professional. Appreciate you giving me that diagnosis. That's what I would say. So here's what I know about peroneals. Peroneus longus wraps underneath the foot, as you said. Do you know what it also attaches to? Or do you know what not attaches to? Let me be really clear. Do you know what else meets it there at its attachment point underneath the foot? Do you know what what meets underneath the foot where peroneus longus attaches? Totally putting you on the spot. That's what the hot seat's like. Doesn't that feel good? It's a little bit of panic. Like, oh shit, she's quizzing me.
Go ahead and answer.
Okay, it's tibialis anterior.
Oh, yeah.
See, you knew it. I
Duh.
knew you knew it. It just makes your brain work a little differently when I ask you instead of just tell you. Okay, cool. So peroneus longus and tibialis anterior make that stirrup underneath the foot. So we get to now look at the balance between those two muscles, because we just said a moment ago, when we're looking for referral pain, we're looking at where muscles attach, what else attaches there, what the tendons are doing at both ends of that muscle, what the fascial bands are doing, etc. So you want to like follow the trail, right? And we know that it's force related, which might mean the muscle is not strong enough, or that the joints aren't strong enough if they're hypermobile, if they're, you know, if their ligaments don't have enough density to them. Not density, if they don't have enough, if they have too much laxity. Okay, so the other thing that I know about peroneus longus, you mentioned the fibula. So you know where it originates, right? It originates at the fibula. What muscle attaches there? Oh, I'm totally putting you on the muscle spot now. What muscle attaches there where peroneus longus originates?
The peroneal muscle, the muscle itself.
What other muscle? What shares that bony landmark?
Oh, there's the gastroc. On the, oh shoot, why are you putting me on the spot?
That's what the hot seat's like. I know I am putting you on the spot. And here's the jam, guys. So Royce, I so appreciate you being brave and like letting me ask you muscle questions. It makes everyone panic. It used to make me break out into a sweat. And every once in a while, I still get one wrong, right? Because there's over 600 of them. And how do you remember all of them? You remember the ones you work on, really. If anyone here is still needing muscle support, please, please, please do that for yourself, because the only way we can trace these patterns through soft tissue is if we know what the soft tissue is. It's not a dig at who you are as an amazing practitioner. It's just another step that we get to take to be really proficient. Like you said, Royce, the more we know we need to know. Muscles and movement, again, I'm pulling another plug here, guys. Muscles and movement walks through every muscle group in its joint function, what it does, and then we immediately implement it so that you start memorizing muscles as they move. So that for you, Royce, for example, as you're watching your students move in their dance class, you can see which muscle's doing the contracting in that moment while you're teaching them. And then if they give you feedback in the moment, you can nail it right there to a function, which then leads you to a muscle and its antagonist. That's what I want for you guys to be able to do if you're movement people, yeah? And also if you're manual people, you got to know like how to also not follow symptoms, you know, don't chase pain symptoms, go to the source. Okay. I'm not going to give you the entire answer, but I'll give you a heads up. It's one of the hamstrings. One of the hamstrings shares the same space as the origination of the peroneal muscle.
Oh yeah. Oh, got it. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Ischial tuberosity. All the hamstrings attach. There's a seminosis. Seminosis goes from inside the knee, and then the big hamstring with the two heads. The bi goes to the outside. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
It's like you just sang me a song. That was so fun. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. See, I know it. Yeah. Okay. Good. So then if we're talking about where the hamstrings start, if we follow them to the end, that's at the ischial tuberosity. So now we're into the pelvis.
Which, oh, that's right. So when if the glutes turn off, then there's knee valgus. There's knee valgus, then that could be possibly rolling in. Then there's no port in the ankle. Am I on the right track or no?
Yes, you are. That's how you trace pain patterns. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Is any of these students valgus?
Yes.
Oh, really? Surprise.
Yeah, and I talk about it all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how you follow pain patterns and functional mechanics by knowing how the body's designed. Right. So if we know how it's designed and all the parts, we know the names and where they attach and then when something's off, we just reverse engineer it. That's what we do in the method. I tell them, teach them how to reverse engineer it, and everybody's different. So It's not a one size fits all because every human body is a different body with a different history and different movement patterns and different constitutions, et cetera. And that's where it can feel sometimes, at the start at least, daunting to work with pain and injury, because it's not a snapshot. It's not like everyone's hamstring attaches in the same place, but everyone's pain pattern is wildly different from the next, even if the symptoms are the same. So, but it's always solvable. It's always solvable if you know how the body is designed. You just reverse engineer it back to there. You just follow the lines and reverse engineer it back to where their pain is, and boom. But do you see how looking below the knee, where you've done that, you've rested them there, you've given them limited range exercises, corrective to come back in, the specialist looked there, and everyone's looking in the same spot and there's no answer because it's not there. 9 times out of 10, it's not there, or something would have solved it.
Yes.
All right. So now you get to go look at these dancers' pelvises. I think that's the correct flow. And then you get to let us know how it goes. Who's got what going on?
Okay.
Okay. There's a whole host of stuff that can go on in the pelvis. Each innominate can move. The sacrum can move. That's definitely Schatz Method territory. That's exactly what we go over there. Doesn't mean you need to have the Schatz Method to solve it. I know you'll be able to find something, but let us know what you find for each of them. Okay. We're going to start looking at a different place.
Thank you.
All right. My pleasure. Did that sort it for you? Did that support you, Royce? Yes. Okay. Awesome. All right. We have time for probably another question. Who's got another question? And you're welcome to type it in the chat if you don't want to come off mute or not on camera, but we have time for another question. I'm happy to answer another question or two if they're short ones. Super fun for me to troubleshoot. Anybody else have a question? Is anyone else typing? I can't see anyone typing, so there's no way for me to know that. Okay, well, we can always leave a few minutes early. That's totally cool. If you have more questions on mobility, definitely let me know that, because like I said at the start, 30 minutes is a nice brief like intro, but there's more that comes up. And something that you shared, Royce, really struck me. I want to make sure I comment on this before I let you guys go. When we learn something new, especially in like these training Tuesdays, which I love, we're taking one nugget and we're looking at only it, right? We're just taking one nugget and we're looking at only it, which is amazing. I love it. And hopefully you'll immediately be able to implement it. That would be great. I would love for you to do that, and definitely send me all of your success stories. I want to hear it. That said, when we focus on one thing like that, two things usually happen. We start seeing all of our clients and how it affects all of them. And we've like, oh, light bulb moment. We can go back through and everyone gets a new treatment this week. The other thing that can happen is that we start seeing it in everyone when it's not the only thing that they need. So we end up thinking, well, that tool didn't work because I used it on everybody and it didn't work. So one tool, like, just looking at mobility, hugely important, but it's one piece of the puzzle. So if this doesn't land for you right now in something that you can implement this week, it doesn't mean that you've failed somehow or that the information wasn't supportive. And if you do implement it and it's not the answer for your client that you're serving this week, it also doesn't mean that you failed them. It means that it's one more thing to stick in your toolbox that you'll pull it out when you need it. And keep it in mind as you're putting together treatment plans, especially if you're working with pain. But like when we were working with you, Royce, it might not necessarily be about mobility. It could be that hypermobility is what causes the instability at the joints that creates the muscles to do what they do, that generates valgus and then ultimately ends up in peroneal tendinopathy. It absolutely could be the base of it, but it's not the only answer that's going to generate a result. Right? Just addressing mobility at this moment doesn't sound like it's going to address the results, unless they are very hypermobile, their innominants are askew, and you get to create strength there, align them and strengthen them, which then takes away the symptom. And in that case, it would be something that is literally the base of it, and that generates a whole new treatment protocol that's separate from dancing. So oftentimes what happens when practitioners come through the mastery program, and I have a dancer in the program right now, they get to a place where they're like, well, but I used to only do dance, or I used to only teach yoga, or I used to only do relaxation massage, but now I have all this other stuff that I really want to do with this person. How do I do both. And so there's a place where you get to integrate both types of treatments so that you know that you have both available to you, and that the clients that you're serving know that you have more available to them as well. And then we get to seamlessly piece together when you would apply these things. When you would apply them is dictated by their treatment plan. So like right now, we know that we get to look at your student's pelvis. If we then find that it's a hypermobility issue, that takes them off of the dance bar and onto a different type of session with you so that you can get that organized so that they can go back to the dance bar safely and not keep creating the pain pattern. So that's another thing to keep in mind, that sometimes it's a tool just to let you know that you get to change course for a minute. Not stop what you're doing, always stay with what you're doing, but you might want to add something new. Okay. All right. So my loves, I'm so happy that you all showed up today. Royce, thanks for bringing us that super juicy case study. That was so fun. I love that you all were here. We're going to meet every Tuesday for the rest of the year, even the week between Christmas and New Year, which I usually take off, but something tells me that we'll have a lot of fun that Tuesday. So mark your calendars. It's noon Eastern every Tuesday from now until the end of the year for sure. And if you can't make it live, that's not a problem. The replays are available on the YouTube channel for 2 weeks. So if you haven't yet, you could subscribe. I'm not asking you to subscribe to the channel because it's not a channel that I build, but I stream it live into the YouTube channel so that you can watch a replay. And then if you have a subscription, what I've been told is that it pops up that there's a new training that's available to you. So, and you have 2 weeks to watch them before we take them down and put them into our archive. So please feel free to come live so that we can chat and talk it up, talk shop. I love doing that. And watch the replay if that's what works for you in any given week. And I'll see you guys, same channel, same time next week. Okay? Bye for now.